Welcome, everybody. I thank you, Lisette, for inviting me, and a special thanks to Macarena Zamora, who was behind or who started all this project by inviting me for an interview with her about the project that she was working on as an interpreter. I wish you all the best, Macarena, in your career, and I have no doubt that you'll be very successful. Also, I have to welcome my friend and coworker, Rianal, with whom we worked together for 3 years. He used to work more in the government building area. And a special welcome, Yanal is attending here. He is now in Tampa, Florida, in the United States. A welcome also to my daughter, Melissa Chaptini. She is as Helen MTL, Montreal. She's in Montreal. And welcome to Jormar Vilches. No sé si está conectado aún o no. Well, if you have a question in Spanish, you can ask. I have no problem answering either in English or Spanish. Okay, and let me start. The first questions that are asked for an interpreter, in what context, legal context, did I start? And what are the legal protections that I had working as an interpreter? As an interpreter, we were employed by a U.S. corporation that provides services of translation and interpretation to the U.S. military. And in this case, it was the U.S. military going to Iraq. Even though we started, I personally started in Hungary 3 months before the war had started. It was a psychological mission. It had its objective, different. It was as a preparation of the war. So as an employee, a US-based employee, we had our salary, we had our conditions as employees. We were not military, not considered as military, no military training whatsoever. Was only employees providing service, and our client was the US military, technically. In reality, all the time we spent was with the military. With the company, it was only administrative work for our salary payment and vacation and resignation, etc., etc. The other part of the aspect, legal or the legal aspect, what do we have to do as an interpreter? Do we have to have an arm? Do we have to take action, military action? The answer is simply no. All this is in a context of the Vienna Convention. We are not allowed to have arms, and we are not to interact whatsoever as an interpreter. Also, the US military, they have a document that specifies a little bit the context of work for an interpreter. We were not supposed to go in a place that was not safe. So the military are supposed to clear it, secure it, and then we enter. Yet I did do some exceptions to this, and I have it pointed in a chapter called the Lion's Mouth, where I put myself in danger more than one time, but in this chapter, just next to the roadside bomb, to point it out. It was ready to explode. I was lucky it did not, but it was my karma that saved me somehow. In regard of related training, we absolutely did not have any training. The hiring was massive hiring. People who could or pretend to speak both languages were hired. When we started in Hungary, because it was a high-profile mission, and usually most of interpreters had this. We had counterintelligence training or classes to avoid have somebody contact us, get information, spying agencies. It was a little bit like in this context that we had it. Also, when we went to Hungary, we had a media, dealing with the media type of training. So what we can answer, what we cannot answer, how to answer a question, how to answer a critical question to somebody from the media. I did have one time, I did have this type of direct contact. I was at the police station in Iraq, where I was stationed in Kirkuk. And there was a rumor that the ex-president Saddam Hussein was in our sector. So somebody from the media called the police station and they wanted to know about this information. Obviously, I had to answer myself and I talked to them and I used some of the techniques I learned. Just answer without giving information. That was the most important thing. Basically, this is the legal context. As far as the objective, every interpreter has a goal in mind, especially in a context like this. We're not talking about a scientific interpretation that has a specific context that ends at the time the interpretation finishes. My agenda was simple. My agenda was trying to help as much as I can liberate the people of Iraq, bring peace, especially after a 13, 14 years of embargo they were living. So other interpreters had other agendas. It's a lot of cultural communication and cultural background where you can have different agenda. So mine was clear and simple, and this helped me get out of Iraq without any trauma. I never had a bad dream or never had any conscious problem with what I did. Yes, I have seen violence. I've seen unjust things happen. I tried my best to help and improve things. It was also a lot of helping the cultural communication between two groups that are totally different and sometimes totally opposite. So the interpretation here is not only about word by word, it's not only about scientific facts. And let me go to the next step. What did I work as an interpreter? Did I go to battles? Did I work with intelligence? Did I work in the government building? So there was 150,000 US troops in Iraq. And every time they had an interaction outside of their base, they had to go with an interpreter. I remember one time they went out to the field to shoot, just to training. They did not need to interact with nobody. However, I was present with them, just in case a shepherd or somebody was in the surrounding. They needed somebody to help them communicate. And that was the case. The temperature was around above 50 degrees Celsius. I was sitting in a tent. I was sweating, even though it's dry. I had to drink maybe 3 bottles of water. The only thing I did that day was talking maybe for 5 or 6 minutes. There was somebody passing by, a shepherd or something. So that was uh, not an active day, but it was a hot day in my life as an interpreter. Uh, so again, every time they went out, they needed somebody. Also, every meeting happened between the two governments. There was somebody. Saddam Hussein, the president, the ex-president of Iraq, was detained. There was, during the interrogation, somebody doing the interpretation. Yanal, my co-worker, had to deal with a lot of those high-profile people. When people were detained, so you can work in detention facility. You can work with the infantry when they go out patrolling. You can work, or we did work in interrogation. I did some interrogations. One of them was tough, but no, I have not seen violence, anything illegal that I could mention. But I've seen tough interrogations, and it's a different context, a different attitude that you can have, or you have to have. Sometimes I worked with special operations, and I did work a lot with the infantry, where they go out patrolling, or they have meeting with the police station, with the police, or trying to reestablish peace in Iraq. So every time the context is different. Also, I worked with intelligence. So there was informants. They have information. And in this context, one time I don't know if I can say I was lucky, but I was able to find, because I was given CDs to scan, to review the information inside, and I found an information that went on the news. It went public. There was a threat on 3 schools in the U.S. What I was able to see was the plans for security of 3 schools in the eastern side of the U.S. So I had to report this, and this information went up to the news. So sometimes it's funny when you are doing something and then it go out public. There is a pride into it. Also, there was another information in there. I'd rather not mention what type of information it was, but it was quite important. So also you can work with psychological operations or with the media. People who do all this imaging or cleaning the image of what is happening in the war, or relationship with the community. I did a lot of relationship with the community. So there are a lot of contexts that you can work in. Any question regarding, anyone has a question regarding on what kind of work can be done in a war context or in a conflict context? Okay. I'm going to ask Yanal to tell us about his experience doing interpretation with high-profile people. He used to work at the government building, so a lot of political figures from both sides were there, and he attended a lot of meetings with high-profile people. What kind of attitude he had to have with them? Are you there? It seems he is trying to connect, but he's not connected. The other theme that may be very, very interesting.
There is one question in the chat box.
Okay. Let me go.
Carolina Mora, she's asking, what has been the most difficult situation working on a context that is war-related?
It may be contradictory to answer, and I may surprise you. The most difficult situation, or the hardest for me during 3 years, was the fact that I couldn't go out of the base, was the fact the living conditions given by the military to us and by our company to us. Yes, there was moments of danger. I was shot at. We went out on a big mission, big raid. At midnight, I was in the first car going in. It was a convoy of maybe 50 Hummers. The first one was shot at. So when you are in a Hummer and all at midnight in a place you don't know, I've never been there, and all I could see and hear was shooting and see red dots going in front of my eyes. 2-3 people, soldiers, got injured. So it was a moment of tough situation. And before this, it was in June. Before or after, 1 or 2 weeks, at 3 a.m., I was stationed in a house because they occupied the houses. And at 5 minutes before 3 a.m., there was a bombing on our house. I was dead asleep. I could barely wake up. One soldier lost his 2 foot, but I couldn't realize, I was so tired that I couldn't realize the danger. It was a dangerous moment. Also, I was in convoys where we got hit by roadside bombs. So that mainly that was the most critical moments. Besides this, I had money on my head, $10,000 and $15,000 and more. And this was because as an interpreter, you are the figure in this context. I got to be the figure, any interpreter. We are the contact, we are the person they talk to, not the officer. Sometimes they get confused. And over time, over year after year, the military was doing rotations once every year. So who was the first year? The team that was the first year, they left. And then another team came in, but the interpreters, we were still the same. So we were considered as decision makers. It was a confusion that was almost impossible to change, or an image almost impossible to change in the head of the local people. And we had to deal with it. Pablo, I'm going to read your question. Doing your ethical principles as an interpreter were compromised at any point? Well, that's a great question, Pablo. No. When I was there, it was not. My objective was spreading democracy and liberate the people of Iraq. That was what I was told. Maybe not the reality. However, after I left Iraq, I was looking for work. I tried to start my own company in cultural communication. It did not take off. So I decided to move on and go back and find a job for me. One of the options was to try to reapply and go to Iraq. I did not do it for ethical reasons. I did not want to make a big salary, to have a big salary for ethical reasons, because I understood that there was two objectives during the war. The declared objective that I bought at the beginning, democracy, freedom of women, and etc., all what was told about Iraq and the objective, and the real objective of the war. I will avoid to talk about politics here. It's not the theme, but when I saw that there is a difference, I did not try to go back and work over there. And even now, I won't go into such a thing. Every interpreter has a choice and the option to reject or not do a work that finds not ethical. I hope I answered your question, Pablo. Anna, how did you end up working there? Did you want to do that job? Was it something that you had planned to do, or suddenly you came across the opportunity? Well, Anna, when you need to work, you need to work. No, I did not plan it, and I did not think about it. I was not an interpreter. I am a polyglot. I speak 5 languages, 4 of them almost native. But I was desperate to get a job. So first time how did we get the job? This is very interesting. To get the job, it's easy. They find you. I had my resume put on a website where you look for jobs. And of course, I put that I speak Arabic. So in the research, they found resumes of people who speak Arabic. And I was contacted to go to Guantanamo Bay the first time. I did the application. The process, once they find you, the process to hire you is a little complex because the application is a long application, one of the most detailed application to file. And then you go through interviewing. The first set of interview, the first interview, basically the basic interview is with the company itself to get the basic information about you. From there on, it's the intelligence and the military who want to make sure that they can work with you or you are trustworthy. So Guantanamo Bay did not work. And then they offered me, they said they are having a job opening that may be coming up in Europe if I would be ready to go. And this happened in between Christmas and New Year of 2002. I was contacted by the company and asked if I can be there ready to work, start working on January 1st. It was short time notice. And I was there on January 1st, 2003. This is how I got. Nothing planned. I was not a professional interpreter at that time. And I was desperate to find any job. So that was, I hope I answered your question also, Anna. Do you regret have been worked as a conflict zone interpreter? Adriana, very nice question. No, I don't regret. I never had a bad dream. It's all the opposite. Again, at the beginning, I mentioned about my intentions and my personal agenda. My personal agenda was to help, and I did. I don't know if Lisette can read some of the reviews or recommendations letters that I was given. They will give an idea about the job I did. And I'm so proud because I I'm proud of being able to make a difference in the life of millions of people. Lisette, I'll give you the word.
Well, here I have some of the letters of recommendation that Richard has. The first one says, and Richard have been invaluable to our effort here. You should be very proud of them. David Barno, Major General, United States Army. Another one reads, his tireless efforts and dedication to the accomplishment of this unique training mission directly contributed to its tremendous success. This is LTC Farid Betros, Middle East and Cultural Affairs Advisor, Task Force Warrior, Tazar, Hungary. Another one. Mr. Chaptini joined my unit just as we began conducting an extremely politically sensitive operation to move squatters out of a housing area owned by North Oil Company. The end result of the first 10 days that Mr. Chaptini served as my translator was that 67 families relocated from the contested area without a single incident. 6 months after the operation, Mr. Chaptini and I maintained close ties with many of the individuals who we asked to leave during those 10 days in May. This result would not have been possible without Mr. Chaptini's skills. Jordan Becker, First Lieutenant. From a social standpoint, the awareness and leadership executed by Captain Jason Ridgway, Mr. Richard Chaptini, and their team have stopped the discrimination among the different ethnicities. Arafat Police Station. Okay, that's a sample of what the people that worked with Mr. Chaptini can tell us about who he is and the important mission that he already told us that he had. It was maybe surprising for some of you to hear that he had a personal agenda. When working as an interpreter, he wanted to bring peace, and that's the most important thing for him when he was working in that context. So for me, it is a real honor to have him here and having us answering all of our questions.
Thank you, Lisette. I have another question here. Which was the best part of doing your job at Iraq? Maybe the food, socializing, trying to help people and helping people. It's joyful when you know and you feel that you made a difference in the life of people. Here I'm going to tell a nice story. When I first was there, I used to go out on my own, alone at the beginning, and then I had 2 bodyguards. And I netted a lot of connections with the local community. One of them was a family with whom I had a very close relationship somehow, and they were like my family. So I used to go over there for lunch or call the lady and tell her, hey, I'm coming. I have a couple of friends coming with me. They were soldiers or sergeants or captains. So I helped in this context also. And one day this lady told me, you know what, Richard, under Saddam, under the embargo, for a new year, we used to have to buy 1 apple for the entire family, and was the only fruit we would eat the entire year. It was something shocking. And then one day, the head sergeant of the company I worked with, the company meaning the group of soldiers headed by a captain, he came to visit the sector and obviously asked me if I can take him around, and he wanted to get a feel of how people live and talk and think. And I called the lady and told her that I will be going and would like to have lunch. Nothing was for free, of course. I was paying back somehow, trying to help them. The sergeant told me, but hey, how can we go there and we have to take something with us? I said, don't worry. We have a lot of cases of fruit in the safe house that will go as garbage, rusted, because we are not allowed to give the soldiers food to local people. But he could give this order. He said, don't worry, we'll bring them some, and that they will be more than happy. Having in my mind that the only fruit they had for years was one apple for the entire family for New Year. And then when we arrived there, he called what is called the safe house, where the base in this sector, and he gave an order to bring the cases of fruit that were in the house. So the Hummer came with 4 soldiers. Everyone was going in with 2 cases of different type of fruit, and going out, getting back with fruit. So all of a sudden, this lady was flooded with fruit, and she went crazy. From 1 apple a year, 2 cases of fruit. So, and this gives you a joy. This gives you a nice feeling, a nice impact. And of course, I told her to give her neighbors and everybody. It was part of the psychological impact and psychological building the image and building the relationship with the community, a nice relationship with the community. And this is why this brings me to tell another story. My last day in Iraq, that is my first chapter, the first chapter in my book. It was when the lieutenant colonel I worked with, he said, Richard, now you are going back to base and this is your last day. What do you want to do? He gave me an honor. I said, I want to go to the police station where I started my first day. And we went there, and the chief of police was asking the colonel why you don't visit me. And the colonel told him, well, your sector is safe. And the chief of police said, well, yeah, I know it is safe, but you know why? Even though this sector is one of the most sensitive sectors in the city. And he pointed the finger at me. He said, it's all thanks to this man, because at the beginning, he built a strong base, a communication base between the community and the US military. So also this means that an interpreter is not only an interpreter, but also a cultural advisor, because you cannot separate the 2 things. It's not a scientific interpretation. So that was my answer to Amory Blanco. Now, Nilo. I will read your answer. This might be a silly question, but how did you learn so many languages? How did you learn about interpreting? I may ask Melissa to answer how I learned so many languages. Melissa is my daughter. She is here with us today, joining us from Montreal, Canada. So I just sent her a hello now, and I will not give you the word. No, I did not. I was not a professional interpreter. You learn interpreting as you go, and I've seen people who, well, I will not go into the failure of the US military as managing the interpretation and linguistic problem in Iraq. It's a big theme. How did I know so many languages? Life will lead you to places where you have to speak, and you have to like to learn languages. I personally, me done. My capacity is more in learning languages. Over time, I developed a process of learning a language, because the institutes where you go start learning with the grammar is not where you have to start. In Lebanon, we start in two languages, Arabic and French or English. And then after 6 years of schooling, you had the third language. My mom was originally Italian. She's 100% blood Italian. They used to speak Italian at home. And that frustrated me that I couldn't. Life took me to Italy for many times, and I learned Italian. I was 48 years old when I came to Iquique in Chile the first time, and I liked it. I came for vacation. I thought, this language I will never be able to learn. They speak too fast. I couldn't do anything, and ended up living in Iquique and becoming fluent in Spanish. And now I'm writing a book in Spanish. So there is a process to learning a language. I will not go into this detail because it will be more than the time we have for today. Nicole, well, I have another question maybe here from, I don't see the full name, C-O-N. I wonder how hard is it to work in this context regarding mental health, and if you take any psychological treatment or something like that. In fact, no, I did not take any treatment. And one of the frustration was the US military would have a month and month of preparation before they go in. And after they go back, after a year, they have 1 or 2 months of psychological preparation. We did not have any of this. And I did not have any psychological problems because I was not involved personally in any violence with bad intentions. I have seen violence. I was into interrogations. I assisted in detaining people. It's not easy when you are out there in a meeting, and then at 12 years old, a boy comes to you and asks you, Mister, where is my dad? We don't have food at home. His dad was detained January 1st at 4 a.m. in 2004. I had no answer. It was not my decision. And it was a little painful at the moment, but nothing on my conscience. I gave him a billete de moneda, de plata, and that was it. And I had the chance to meet his father again after 2 years, and the guy came and hugged me and kissed me, and he was a very good person with me at that time because he knew that my intention was good. So even people I detained, when they saw me after their detention, because I did not detain them, I was there when they were detained. After their detention, they were very friendly with me. They did not avoid to talk to me or come to me and hug me and express their feelings. So I have always been clear conscious in all what I did, trying to help the best and trying to find justice as much as I can, because as an interpreter, you will never have a signature. I did not have, I was not a decision maker. However, I was. And this is a good part of, we may not have the time to talk about it now, but it's very important because interpreters, you get to get the confidence of the person you work with, and they don't know the culture. So I was given a lot of power, and the people who gave me the power, they would sign whatever I would say. I did a lot of this.
Richard,
I think
there's one person with hands up. Patricio Gonzalez, he wants to speak, I think.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Richard, for your time and for talking to us about such an interesting profession. And also, I'd like to thank Lisette and the university for organizing this. So I guess my first question is there hazard pay for a conflict zone interpretation? Is it different in that sense from other types of interpretation?
Absolutely, absolutely. We had two upgrades in our pay. So we had the base salary, and then there was the hazard pay and another pay. I don't know what it was. I can't remember what it was called. So as we started at the beginning of the war, the danger was not as high as after. So as we were going into the war, the danger and the risk was higher and higher. So we started with an 10% and 15% on either one raise. And then another, they went up to 40, 45, level 5, 6. So we went from level 1, 2, 3. And when we would leave Iraq on vacation, the pay would be only the base salary, which was not a little.
Was it?
In figures, the pay was yearly pay. Okay, and my last year I got to make over 100,000, a little over. The year after, it got to be maybe $150,000, $140,000 a year, and there was a lot of bonuses. The bonuses were because a lot of people would not want to go there. So if you when you are hired, they give you $10,000 or 15, or if you want to resign, they offer you a bonus to say 3 months and then give you an extra 10,000, stuff like this. It was all based on demand and offer.
Right. Absolutely. That makes sense. So, and I think I have one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So I don't know if you saw in the news, you probably did, that when the US pulled out of its last war zone, that they left behind local interpreters, and these people that helped the US, they've been captured. So do you have any thoughts on this, or was it something that was not well done? What would you say is the difference, or was it a hasty retreat in that sense?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Patricio, but it's a political question.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
If I have to answer the ethics of what the U.S. policy, I'm going to give you an example or tell a story. One day I was traveling. I met this guy who was from reserve. Remember, we were in 2003. And in 89, during the first Gulf War, he was Special Forces. And then they were working with the Kurds up in the north. They were helping them. They are alive. They always have been alive. So he told me that at some point, the order came to them to pull out and leave. They could only take 20 or 25 or a number of people with them. But there were hundreds working with them. All of a sudden, the order was told to leave, and then they knew that the Saddam army would go in and there will be repercussions. They left in less than 24 hours. The people were telling them, "What are you doing?" We were buddy. We were very, very friends. Who was his close buddy, a very close friend an hour ago, now he's telling him, get the heck out, not to say another word. And then he had to switch from a friend to, hey, get out. I don't know you. So this is related to the US policy. And it's known worldwide, the US has double standard policy, and they do stuff like this. You forced me to talk about politics.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's the policy of they chew you up and they throw you away.
That's
okay?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is the way it is. I will avoid to talk more politics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your answers, Mr. Chaptini. Thank you.
But you're welcome, Patricia. Let me see here. I have another question. I was wondering if your employer or the military gave you psychological support. I have a good story to tell here. I imagine that even interpreters could develop PTSD symptoms. Okay, that's a very interesting question. I have a story to tell. Let me read the question for everybody. Hello, I was wondering if your employer or the military gave you psychological support. I imagine that even interpreters could develop PTSD, which is post-syndrome, post-deployment syndrome, something like this.
Yeah, I think it's post-stress traumatic syndrome.
Yeah. In such complicated climate. I mentioned the second part of the question I did talk about earlier when I talked about the preparation of the military. And we did not have any of this. Now, in relation of the support, psychological support. In 2004, I was on a base, in a remote base in the desert, in a very difficult area, very security-wise, very dangerous area. And my coworker, who used to live in the container, we were 3 US interpreters living in one container. And my coworker was shot by a sniper here. Not to mention, after 2 months or 3 months after, I learned that the objective was me. They were trying to get me because I was known in the area. So the coworker shot, and obviously we needed support. There was about 23 local Iraqi interpreters also rotating, and 3 US-based, US citizen interpreters. Nobody ever received an email from the company manager who was stationed in the main base 40 kilometers away to say, hey, Richard, hey, guys, I was the oldest one, so he could have talked to me or maybe another one, the other US-based, or the locals. Nobody was ever asked the question. Nobody was ever told, hey, I'm sorry, how do you feel? Nothing. And as the custom is, as interpreters, we gathered and we had like a misa, like prayer for him. He was Muslim, but we had a kind of meeting to express our sorrow. From the military, the second in command came and spent some time with us. And besides this, nothing. No support whatsoever. And that was one of the reasons that I felt the need to leave or to resign, because it was not the danger at work who made me want to leave. I resigned because I was not feeling that I was treated in a just manner by my employers and my client. because the military was my client, or the client of my employer. So I don't think it was fair treatment. So I resigned. I wanted to try something else. I did. It did not work. Then I came to Chile on vacation. Welcome, Yanal. Yanal just joined us. He may have had some problems. Can you hear us, Yanal? Ernesto, you have a great question. People died because of this. I will answer Ernesto and see if Yanal can speak a little bit. People did die, Ernesto. Well, let me read Ernesto's question first. While you were there, were you completely aware that your interpretation could provoke a misunderstanding or conflict? I will tell you a nice story about this. And it was a big topic over there. And based on the personal agenda, I mentioned that I had a personal agenda at the beginning, but other people had personal agenda in a different objective, different agenda. So one day, a troop patrolling went out to the field, and they found a shepherd who was out there, and the shepherd had a weapon with him. Well, having a weapon in Iraq is something was everywhere. And the shepherd, everywhere in the world, shepherds do have a weapon somehow to protect themselves and to protect the animals. So they had an interpreter. The shepherd was ethnically Arab, from an Arab, and the interpreter was Kurdish, local Kurdish. There is a lot of animosity between Kurds and Arab. So the U.S. soldier asked through the interpreter, asked, "Why do you have a weapon?" The shepherd answered, "I have the weapon to protect myself. If a wolf attacks my sheep or anything happens, it's a protection. It's normal. Everybody has this." The interpretation came differently. The interpretation came such as, "I have a weapon, so when I see Americans, I can shoot and kill them." And what happened to the shepherd? He was detained. So, misinterpretation, side talks do happen very often. It was very common. Yanal, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Finally,
yeah.
I was having a problem with audio, but now
I noticed you had some problems. Yanal, thank you for joining us. It was nice. It's nice having you. And I do have a question for you, if you can answer. It's something I did not do personally much, and you know it. You did a lot of interpreting to high-profile people, such as Dick Cheney or Rumsfeld or Paul Wolfowitz. I've seen you do the interpretation for Paul Wolfowitz. So can you tell us about your experience doing interpretation with people of such a high profile?
Yes, of course. It's before I never was an interpreter. Before it's something, a job came up, and it's I went to Iraq and started interpreting, and it happened I got to translate or interpret for some politicians. What I learned, I was away from politics. I never been into it. I never liked it, but. What I learned, these guys are professionals. They are well prepared for everything. They have an agenda, and they are, during the interpretation, like they are testing the waters with the other side. So they are laying traps, or they are trying to sense what the other side's wants or feel or intentions, you know. It was, you know, an experience that, interesting experience.
Okay, and that's it. Do you have anything else you?
If you need something specific, I would gladly answer.
Yes. What was your? Lisette, can you ask him the question, please?
Oh, yes. We wanted to ask you if you have any advice for the future interpreters that are here today.
Yes. My advice to them is to be honest, you know, because you could fall in a traps, you know, while interpreting, because when you are interpreter, you don't translate word by word, because if you do that, you know, it's not right. You know, you lose the meaning or the message, you know. And lots, as I heard from my friend Richard there, you know, he said, yes, you know, some interpreters, they have an agenda. But beside that, you know, some of them, they're honest, but out of they're naive, you know, that they fall in a trap that word by word interpretation can give or relay the wrong message to them, you know. Just be, you know, interpretation is, you know, you need to translate or transform the meaning of the question or the phrase, you know, not word by word interpretation.
Well, thank you, Yanel. This is a topic that is mentioned, and Lisette and I talked about much. The interpreters here are now learning the cabin context, the scientific stuff, but the interpretation we do is a combination of interpretation and cultural advisory or cultural interpretation. And this is exactly what an interpreter in a social context has to be aware of. As we learned and we experienced a lot of problems through interpretation. Here I would like to say thank you to Adriana Lucia Diaz for your comments. Well,
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. You know, it's where you guys are. You know, I don't know what's this program is. You know, could you just give me some?
No. Well, actually, we are in Viena, and Lisette is the professor for interpreters at the Universidad Católica in Viena, next to Santiago. You have been to Vicuña, Valle del Elqui. It's 400 kilometers away, and I hope the weather is good in Tampa, Florida, where you are.
It's good and hot. You know, it's. I love Chile. It's a nice country. You guys doing good, doing a great job.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
And I thank you again for having me as a guest.
It's a pleasure. I hope everybody else enjoyed your. I'm pretty sure that everybody else enjoyed your presence.
I hope so. I hope I was helpful.
Well, that's thanks to the technology we have now.
Yes.
All right. Adriana Lucia Diaz, thank you for your comments. I allow myself to read them humbly. Adriana says, wow, más escucho y más me impresiona. Mr. Chaptini me quito el sombrero. Y muchas gracias, Adriana. It's nice to read this.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice day and goodbye.
Thank you, Yanel. Okay. I don't know if we have time to address another point or two, or it's 2:05. Maybe the simultaneous.
Yes.
Start. As interpreters, you know, you can have simultaneous interpretation and continuous. Simultaneous is, in my opinion, is more important in a context like cabin context. The continuous is more social interpretation. Okay. Simultaneous, the other person or the person you work for does not have the time to think. When we used to work in continuous, so it was there was time going on, so my boss would be able to think. I'm going to take 2 minutes and tell you the story. One day, we went to a meeting at the police station. Two lieutenant colonels. They are both battalion commanders, and the area was for both. So the other, I was with one lieutenant colonel, and the other lieutenant colonel had a Kurdish interpreter who was also an Arabic interpreter. So the conversation, and the police chief was Kurdish. The conversation was in Kurdish. I knew that the Kurds had some side conversations between them without being interpreted, doing side business. However, at the time of the interpretation, as I was able to learn some Kurdish over there, I was able to understand what was the conversation about. To a certain extent, I was able to hold my co-worker to try to have a side conversation outside of the context of the meeting. And I was briefing my boss next to me about what they were talking about. So he was prepared when the translation, the interpretation came to him, the complete text. He knew what to answer. He was preparing. He had minutes of time to prepare his answer. To the opposite, the other lieutenant colonel did not have the time. So because I was slowly talking in a low voice, not to in order not to interfere. And at some point, the other interpreter turned at me and said, "Richard, you never told me that you speak Kurdish." I said, "I don't." I said, "No, it's not true. You speak Kurdish. I'm tired. It's been an hour for me doing the interpretation. So can you come in and take over?" I said, "No, I won't. Please continue your job." And this is the benefit. This is, I said it's also a chapter in my book. And this is the benefit of doing consecutive interpretation. Had the interpretation been simultaneous, I wouldn't be able to prepare my client directly in what was going on. He couldn't prepare his answers. So he had the better negotiation conditions, okay, per se. Anything else, Lucette? I can keep talking.
Okay, I think maybe this will be a good time to wrap up, because I know some of the students have other activities already programmed, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote. Maybe there are some people that are interested in buying it. I can be the middle person here. If they live in Viña, I can give them the book. You have experience managing these things.
All right, now it's time to talk a little bit about myself and something not as an interpreter. Here is my book. This is Mr. Rich in Spanish, and this is the English version. Okay, the book is Mr. Richard, My Experience in La Guerra de Irak in 2003-2006. It's all small stories about missions that I did. Some of them I mentioned during my talk, but very briefly. If somebody is interested, you can communicate with Lisette, and we'll coordinate everything else. There are some cultural issues inside. It's more of a cultural communication than war stories. Okay. Also, I'm working on another project, and it's about hospitality and human communication. Another book that will be hopefully soon out, printed and out. Okay. Besides this, well, again, thank you, everybody. Adriana Lucia Diaz, could you send the book to Colombia? It will be very costly to send it to Colombia. Only if there's somebody traveling to Colombia, that would be possible. I'm happy to know that somebody in Colombia is also watching us, and somebody in Venezuela. You know, it's becoming an international lecture now. So I thank everybody for joining us, everybody who had a question. Is appreciated, and well, I think that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
Any last question? I can take one more.
Before you do that, maybe we should shift into Spanish just for now. Les quería pedir si pueden encender sus cámaras para sacar una foto de todo el grupo. Les puse mi mail ahí en el chat para que lo tengan si alguien quiere comunicarse con Richard, después yo puedo hacer el contacto. Y, ok, la última cosa es que también me preguntaron si esta charla va a quedar en algún lado. Sí, la van a subir al canal de la carrera en YouTube. Así que después les puedo mandar el enlace para que la vean. Gracias por encender sus cámaras. Un segundito. Ya pongan cara de felicidad. Y, qué charla más interesante.
I see somebody from Vicuña here, another an author, Christopher Orellana. So a lot of people.
Ya, voy a tomar otra más. Listo, gracias a todos. No sé si alguien quiere una última pregunta en español, tal vez. Los que no se atrevieron a hacerla antes, ahora es el momento.
¿Puedo dejar mi correo electrónico?
Por supuesto, gracias, Richard.
No sé cómo hacer la arroba.
Si quieres, dímelo, yo lo tipeo.
Bueno, acá Chaptini @yahoo.com. No sé hacer la arroba.
Ya, aquí está, no te preocupes. ¿Todos lo ven, cierto?
¿Cómo?
Les preguntaba a los chicos si lo pueden ver.
Sí. Sí, eso es correcto. Ese es mi correo. Si a alguien le gusta o tiene alguna pregunta sobre el tema, yo con todo placer si puedo ayudar también. Sé lo que es ser un intérprete.
Excelente, muchas gracias a todos por haber estado acá hoy día. Fue un placer tenerlos. Creo que fue una conversación bien interesante. Nos habría gustado muchísimo hacer esto en persona, por supuesto. Ya tal vez en el futuro se pueda, esperemos que sí. Y de nuevo, mil gracias a todos por escucharnos, por estar acá, por la participación, fue muy buena. Y mil gracias a la Maca, que se tuvo que ir, por haber hecho el contacto, y a Richard por estar aquí de nuevo con nosotros y por hacerme el honor de venir a mi casa y estar dispuesto a hablar con ustedes, chicos. Así que gracias a todos por estar aquí hoy día. Estoy muy contenta y espero que les haya gustado. Cuídense
Chao.
mucho. Nos vemos.
Chao. Hasta la próxima.